All right. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining Sisters in Media Reporting While Black. My name is Oladatun Ido. You know me as Ola. I am the founder of Sisters in Media. The purpose of our organization is to increase the presence of women of color in media while making a valuable contribution to our community and society at large. What that entails is media partnerships and in-person events. We've worked with NBA, NBC, we've worked with Refinery and so much others. We're really excited. Well, we're not excited about this quarantine moment, but we're excited about what it's offering, which is a transition from in-person to digital events like we're experiencing today. So stay tuned. This is going to be a great talk. I'm really excited about these speakers. But before I present these wonderful women, I want to just provide a few housekeeping rules. If this is your first time joining our event, make sure that you are live in the chat. The chat is for you to ask questions to our speakers, to me, and it's also to comment, because we really want this to feel like a engaging conversation with us and with everyone that is tuned in. So thanks for joining. And with that, without further ado, let me introduce our amazing speakers. First up, we have Keyaira Kelly. She is a host, writer, and producer with bylines and interviews scattered across the web and in print on behalf of major media brands, including Essence, The Grigio, Hello Beautiful, and so much more. She's also the host of Talk to Your Mom, a podcast about the importance of generational transparency between women. As an established media professional, Keyaira has worked with beauty brands for product campaigns, .coms for write-ups and reviews, and clothing and hair brands for sponsor posts. She has interviewed some of Hollywood's best and brightest A-list talent, including Taraji P. Henson, Samuel L. Jackson, Oprah, Donald Glover, Tyler Perry, to name a few. She has also penned print cover stories for New York's leading men lifestyle magazine for men of color, Blue Magazine. She self-published her poetry book, I Wish My Mango Would Ripen, in 2015. Everyone give a virtual applause to Keyaira. And you guys can say it all in the chat. Thanks, Keyaira. That is what, Oprah?
That's the truth. That's the best moment of my life so far.
Oh my God. Moving on, we have Darian Harvin. She is a freelance reporter and news curation editor covering beauty at the intersection of politics and pop culture. She has an IGTV series titled Beauty Headlines, in which she covers the top beauty news each week and how it affects us. Darian's work on social media has been dedicated to working on thoughtful and shareable ways to present news to people on the internet and in real life for platforms like BuzzFeed News, Yahoo News, NBC News, and Vox.com. She currently writes for the New York Times, wow, Refinery 29, Teen Vogue, and The Cut. Darian graduated from Emerson College in 2013 with a Bachelor of Arts in Broadcast Journalism. Everyone virtually welcome Ms. Darian. And you're gonna have to give us beauty tips after this, so let's stay online. Kristin Myers. Kristin Myers is an award-winning journalist and producer that has helped launch Al Jazeera America and has worked with other news organizations like Bloomberg News, NBC, and more. She's currently a reporter with Yahoo News, writing about politics and policy. Chris is a former communications officer where she served as field reporter on humanitarian crisis. She has written on a range of issues from climate change to education to the growing global refugee crisis. Throughout her working career, Kristin has been part of field teams covering protests in Ferguson and the funeral of Nelson Mandela in South Africa. Kristin networks with diplomats, NGOs, politicians, and high-profile policymakers and analysts on a daily basis. Kristin holds a master's degree in international journalism from Cardiff University and a bachelor's degree from the University of Pennsylvania. Everyone welcome Kristin. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'm like so honored. Your bylines and biography, I'm super impressed, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, I'm excited for this talk.
Me too. My pleasure.
I got my glass of wine ready.
I know. I saw your glass of wine and I was like, I should have gotten a glass of wine.
I was just like, I wanted to get the wine, but I was like, is that weird? I should have did it. We're all at home.
Me too.
Well, so I think just to start it off, before we get deep into the conversation, I would love for you all to just tell us how you ended up in journalism and your career journey to where you are right now. I think I'm gonna say
you need to call us out.
Yeah.
So it won't be like all disruptive. So Keyaira, would you like to start?
Sure. Okay. So I entered the University of Southern California my freshman year with an intention to do my bachelor's degree in creative writing. I've always been a writer. I've always loved writing. And, you know, midway through my undergrad education, I got real spooked when everyone was like, oh, you want to be a writer for a living? You're not going to make any money. You went to USC. So I ended up double majoring in creative writing and communication. And then I went on to get my master's in communication management. So I originally moved to New York working in communications. I was working doing advertising, marketing, and sales for TV networks like the Africa Channel and the Style Network with NBC. And I was completely miserable being on the side of selling and marketing stories, but not actually creating them. And so through a bunch of serendipitous layoffs, I finally got to the point where I decided I'm going to dedicate my life to writing and that I wasn't going to be afraid of the money aspect of it. I was just going to trust that God was going to take care of it. And in 2014 or 2015, in 2015, I got my first full-time staff writer role at Radio One, one of their digital brands, Hello Beautiful, Madame Noir. They have a bunch of women's sites. And so that's really where it all kicked in. Like, I've always been in the business of telling stories, but that's when I really dedicated my life to it. Just about 7 months ago, I finally took a leap of faith and decided to start working for myself. So right now I'm an independent contractor and I write for Essence, Exo Nicole, the World Economic Forum, the Griot, all across the board. So this is very new for me, doing this independent writer thing. So far it's been so freeing to have that, but that's just a little snapshot of my journey so far.
I love it. And I love that you were brave enough to make that transition just in time for like this quarantine dynamic. Like you have ownership of your career path just because of that decision. That's pretty brave.
Yeah, definitely didn't know what was coming, but I'm grateful. Yeah.
I'm so grateful that my career ended up here right before all of this messiness happened too. So we'll get into that in another time. But Darian, do you want to tell us about your career journey and how you ended up here?
Yeah, sure. So I would definitely say that I, growing up, always really liked writing and talking to people. And so when it was like time for me to finally make a career choice, I very much based it off of that. And that's honestly how I ended up in journalism. I went for broadcast journalism, but it was really during the time where digital journalism, backpack journalists, just you needed to really understand and know how to do everything. And so Emerson was really good about kind of shifting the curriculum during my time there. I knew I was wanting to be in front of the camera, and I really honestly thought that I was going to end up at like a local news station in like a really small market, but I kind of just decided to move to New York. That was kind of just where, you know, I was gravitating towards. And I said, okay, I'm going to see what happens. If I can get a job over the summer in like 3 months, I'm just going to see what happens. Looking back, that's not enough time to like find a job. I don't want people to think that. I think it just ended up thankfully working out for me. And I had previously been an intern at NBC, so I had an in there. And by the end of that summer, thankfully, I got a job as a programming coordinator, but specifically the assistant to the executive producer of Dateline. But it was there that I got really involved, you know, learning how to PA on stories, and also got really involved with digital as well, and just learning how to live tweet, you know, just really understanding how to be a social media editor for a news organization. After that, I actually went to go work for this magazine called Hardcover. It put out, it was basically like a proof of concept, a one edition that really is just this idea of reimagining who and what we cover and what we deem as newsworthy, and expanding that and making it more diverse. And so that really was impactful for me because it like helped to shape my taste in what I'm into covering. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I started to work specifically more within mobile curation. So like sending push alerts, figuring out what the top stories in a mobile app should be, in addition to doing a lot of social work as well, or work on social media platforms. And then my last job was at BuzzFeed News as a news curation editor. I really enjoyed working there, but I've always just had an entrepreneurial spirit. If I'm being completely honest, I don't always love working in offices. I think the concept of vacation days are really weird. I think I should be able to like do with my time what I want. And so I took a leap of faith. I moved to LA. I also really wanted a change of scenery and needed a break too, I think, from media. I think that like anyone who was like in the newsroom or covering news, like during that night of the election in 2016, everything changed after that, and I got really burnt out. And growing up, my mom was a hairstylist, so I was always around beauty, and I really started to like dabble within that world. I realized that there was a real need to cover beauty the same way that I was covering or sharing politics or tech or travel, I think. And so really that's what my approach has been, has figuring out like, how can I tell more stories that are within beauty that talk about students or the economy or being a Black woman, whether it has to do with our hair or our skin. How can I also use this to learn about other cultures' relationship to beauty and self-presentation? And so, yeah, that's really where I've been. And I do a lot of freelance writing, but always, I think it's really important as a reporter to expand the platforms and the mediums of your reporting. I think that's kind of how you have to survive if you want to do this. And so that's been a huge goal for me as well.
That's awesome. So 2 back-to-back stories about making brave moves in your career, you making that move to go to LA and then just transitioning your writing style and going into beauty from politics. I think that's super amazing. And I really do want to talk about, we'll get into that, but I do want to talk to you more about representation of Black women and how I think it's also very important that we talk about beauty. Yes, politics is important and so many other areas, but if I don't feel like I'm represented when I open a magazine or when I'm watching the show, and if I don't feel like there are not good tips on what I should do with my hair or what I should do with my makeup, then is anyone here really telling my story? So that's really important, and I'm glad you shared that with us. Kristin, last but not least, we'd love to hear your journey getting into journalism.
Yeah, so unlike the 2 other ladies, Darian and Keyaira, who kind of knew they loved writing, I did not start out journalism that way at all. And I'm a daughter of an immigrant from the Caribbean, and in our family, you are either a doctor, a lawyer, or a disappointment. So I started out trying to go to med school. No, it's true. So when I started out at Penn, even though I loved writing, I was very good at math and science. And so I was like, right, I am going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a surgeon one day. I'm going to be badass in medicine. And that's what I essentially decided to go for. Being a journalist was not in the cards for me. But as you mentioned, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, and they have requirement classes that we have to take. And one of them was like an English class. And I was like, ugh. So I decided I was going to take a journalism course because I thought that would be easy way of fulfilling that requirement. I didn't want to have to be reading all these books all the time, writing essays. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go do journalism. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I wanted to go to journalism class more than I ever wanted to go to my bio lab, molecular biology at the time. And so I was like, all right. I started reading more about med school. I found out that they love when, you have a diverse background. Perhaps you don't need to major in a math or science. You can major in something like journalism. The time I was looking at PPE, philosophy, politics, and economics, and I figured, okay, I'm going to major in that and go to medical school. So I started taking more journalism classes, started taking more philosophy courses, politics courses. And then I decided to do a full switch into my English major. And of course, my mom was terrified. She kept asking me, what are you supposed to do with an English major? Teach? And I was like, no, Mom, I hate teaching. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to be a teacher. So she was terrified. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to take a journalism internship at NBC Philly, NBC 10. And I'm going to see, if I really like it. And I loved it. And then I was like, all right, Kristin, you are lying to yourself. You do not want to go to medical school. I still have a very soft spot, you know, for medicine. Again, I do absolutely love science. I do love medicine. And I do sometimes tell myself, if this whole journalism thing don't work out, I'm going to try to go to med school or do something in the medical field. But I knew I was kidding myself. I really wanted to do journalism. That's what I was very much interested in. So that's what I decided to major in. At Penn, there's no journalism major as such. So you major in English, and then you can kind of get what they call like a concentration. So I did a concentration in journalism, and then did a double major with French. And then I decided that I wasn't ready yet to enter the real world. So I decided to get my master's in international journalism from Cardiff University, which is in Europe. So then I left the country entirely. Got my master's in international journalism, loved it, made some amazing friendships. And I was like, all right, I'm going to be a journalist. Plan to stay in London and live there because I love London, I love Europe, and I felt like London and England was the best place for me to like have a career to do international journalism. But then life came knocking and I became engaged to a Norwegian, so I moved to Norway. I don't speak Norwegian. Well, I do now, but I did not speak Norwegian at the time. So I landed in Norway and needed a job and needed it in journalism in a language that I did not speak at all. And through some really great connections and friends that put me on, I ended up working at Bloomberg News in Norway, going out, doing interviews in business news. Just as a sidebar, I'm a very big believer in fake it till you make it. So when they called me and said, hey, like we need someone to do a business reporting, like, can you do that? Are you experienced in that? I was like, yeah, absolutely I am. I absolutely was not. I just said that because I needed a job. But I was like, you know what? I'm smart. I'm going to learn whatever I need to learn on the ground. I'm going to go for it. So I went for it. Became a journalist at Bloomberg. It was one of the best experiences of my life. One, I covered some really amazing things and topics. I covered the Anders Breivik trial. He was a terrorist in Norway. At 23, then was reporting with the State Department, correspondence from all the other outlets. Bloomberg decided for some reason to send me off on the plane with Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State to cover her visit. And I think that was the first time that I really realized, even though I was like 23 or 24, everyone else as a journalist was so much older than me, so much more experienced. But I was asking questions that other people wanted to ask. And I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. So when I came back to the United States, decided to work for Al Jazeera just because, again, I love international news and Al Jazeera is a great international news outlet. So decided to work at Al Jazeera America as a producer. And for anyone that has watched Al Jazeera America, they might know that it no longer exists at all. So after Al Jazeera closed, I decided to go to an organization called Concern Worldwide. And the reason being, I was working inside the comms department, but my role with them was that I was going to report for the organization about international humanitarian crises and that they would send me on the ground. So I went to South Sudan for almost a month. I've been to Sierra Leone. They sent me to Haiti. So I got to go all around the world and report for them. After doing some field work, of course, at Al Jazeera in Charleston and Ferguson, I was in South Africa for about a month with Al Jazeera as well. And after, I know Darian was mentioning the 2016 election, or maybe it was Keyaira, I think it was Darian. After the election, I was like, wow, I really miss a newsroom. And I really feel like my voice is needed and that people that have backgrounds like mine, look more like me and even darker, need to be reporting in politics. And so I was like, I need to get back into the newsroom. And that's essentially how I ended up at Yahoo Finance, through NABJ, actually, a connection that I met there. So for anyone that does not know if you can actually get a job at NABJ, yes, you actually can. And I encourage everyone to go because you never know who you're going to meet there. So I made a connection at NABJ, decided to come work at Yahoo Finance. I know I've got some coworkers in the chat. Hello to you guys. And for Yahoo Finance, I pretty much report on politics and policy. I report on inequality. I have my own show now that they gave me where every Thursday I report on racial inequality and how it is impacted by different structures in banking, education, housing, healthcare. Honestly, you name it, racial inequality exists in it, and I'm going to be the one to talk about it and break it down for 30 minutes every week. And then I also report on a lot of this stuff. So I report on things like reparations, or how Black workers are the most impacted by coronavirus, or, you know, how policies in education are impacting, you know, Black millennial women from not getting hired or going to school. So I get to write about all those things that really interest me through the lens of money, because I have a personal belief that if I can't change your mind on just humanity alone, then I'm going to try to change your mind on the fact that it's better for your bottom line, for you not to be racist, for you to be encourage diversity, for you to, you know, support women, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a very brief way that I got to where I'm at.
I love that NABJ shout out, because NABJ has done a lot for me too in my career. So guys, if you're on here, you don't know about NABJ, look them up. They're great. And there's also NAHJ for our Latinx community. So you all three talked about how you personally love journalism, which is great. It's a passion of yours. But do you think that race had any effect or any reason why you wanted to get into the field? Because I feel like anything that I do with Sisters in Media, it has to do with race. Like, I wanted to do this because I felt like there was a lack of women of color in my media field. So this was my way of reaching them. Did any of you guys join journalism and get into this field because you saw a lack and you wanted to add more? You saw that there wasn't great representation, so you wanted to be the voice, or not?
I feel like initially in wanting to get into it, that wasn't my reason. I think that it was actually more of wanting to like broaden my own perspective of the world and just share it with other people. But I think that when I got more into it and I realized how incredibly white it was, and also how that affects coverage in the idea of objectivity and whose lens we're talking about when we're talking about that, I realized that I was needed. And I also feel like specifically within beauty, one of the reasons why I focus on Black women is because the beauty industry is a multi-billion-dollar global industry, specifically within the US, whether we're talking about the ethnic hair care category, which Black women dominate in terms of sales, or if we're just talking about the money that we spend within different beauty sectors, we have such a huge influence we put a lot of our money there. And so I think that even for my financial
Did we lose her? Did we lose you, Darian? Kristin, can you still hear us?
Yes, I got you. I think we might have lost Darian.
I can hear too.
Is she coming back? There we go.
Oh my God.
It's okay.
But I guess basically bottom line is that Black women put a lot of their money into this industry. We deserve to see more of ourselves covered within beauty. And so and I think Black men too. Like, I was like tweeting today about men who are now and have been for a while installing like the hair pieces, and you know, I think we deserve to hear more about like why is that happening now, you know? So
yeah, I agree. Do you guys, Keyaira and Kristin, also feel like race played a part in you wanting to tell stories, or not really?
It didn't for me at first, at least. It's not the reason why I went into journalism at the time. I realized that I loved to tell stories. And I felt like I could tell stories that weren't being heard. Now, looking back on it later, race absolutely did have a piece to play in that. I just at the time didn't realize it. You know, it's not something that I actively was thinking about. It's something that I have now been able to give, you know, language and vocabulary around. But when I was 20, I had no idea. And remember, when I started my journalism career, I was an immigrant in a strange land with a strange language. So it definitely didn't click for me then. It wasn't until I started working at Al Jazeera that it really kind of hit home for me, especially because at the time, the United States was going through periods of turmoil, especially around Ferguson and Charleston, right? Those are two big tentpole events for me, where I was actually a part of, the media. Obviously, events like Ferguson and Charleston have happened many, 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 many times over in America's history. But it was the first time that I was in the newsroom actively helping to shape the media narrative around it. And I realized that even though I was at this supposed, internationally minded newsroom, that still was a little bit more progressive than some of the other major media outlets like CNN or ABC, that our newsroom was incredibly white. And they had no idea at all the questions that they should be asking, the people that they needed to be reaching out to, the stories that they should be covering. In fact, I remember one time they pushed me and a couple other Black folks that they could grab to the newsroom to try to sell us to Michael Brown's mom and Trayvon Martin's mom, and saying things like, we care about stories like yours. And I remember being like, their son's dying is not a story like this. This is a part of structural systemic racism inside the United States that kills Black and brown men disproportionately to their white counterparts. This is not a story like this. The fact that this is how you framed it in your head is inaccurate. And that's when, for me, I recognized, no, I need to be in this newsroom, because I was having fights in pitch meetings. As just a quick example, I remember one time my editor, our senior producer, who controlled the news hour, was saying, oh, hey, I think we need to do a story about how heroin is hitting this, affecting, some middle-class neighborhoods now. And I was like, I think the story should be, you only want to talk about it now that white kids are suffering from it in the suburbs. That's really the story. The story is not the fact that crack has hit, Becky and Susie and Chad and John in the middle of middle America. No, the problem is the fact that crack and heroin have been existing in the Black community for years and none of y'all ever cared about it. So why don't we talk about that? That's the real story. We never covered the story altogether because I raised such hell about it. But the point was, I really realized at that moment, and again, I was like 25 at the time. I've always been really opinionated. You're never going to tell me to shut up. So I think in that moment was really when I was like, no, I need to be here. My voice matters. And I know that we're going to be getting into this, but also my skin color is a privilege that I absolutely need to make sure that I use. Colorism is absolutely a thing. I'm going to have a privilege in a newsroom that Keyaira and Darian aren't going to, just by nature of the fact that they are, darker than me. And it's a privilege that, and a power that I really take full responsibility for. And I feel that I absolutely need to be one of the loudest rooms in the newsroom, because it's you might ignore one of my sisters or brothers that's darker, but you're not going to ignore me because you're thinking for some reason that I'm white. So I'm going to Trojan horse this whole thing when I come into your newsroom. And I'm going to sneak, you're going to sneak me in thinking I'm one of you guys. And then guess what? I'm here now. And you're going to realize that I'm not at all. And we're going to be talking about these issues that are really, really important. So I think for me, that was that moment that I was like, no, I absolutely need to be talking about these things. I need to be doing these things. Representation absolutely matters. And I'm going to, do my damnedest in whatever newsroom that I'm in, whatever editorial meeting that I'm in, to bring these stories, talk about these things, and really push that agenda forward.
Yes, the Trojan horse.
I love that.
God, I'm gonna use that sometime. I love it. No, thank you
so
for
good.
doing that. We'll get into the whole privilege too and colorism, because I'm sure that all three of you may have experienced that as journalists, as writers of color. But Keyaira, I want to let you speak on that as well. If your race had anything to do with you getting into journalism.
Yeah, I think it's similar in the aspect that again, as a young 20-year-old trying to get into the game, I wasn't really aware of what was going on the inside. It wasn't until I started working red carpets and I would walk into a red carpet line, and basically you come to the red carpet and you look down to see where your name and your outlet is placed on the carpet. And I started to notice that as a Black outlet, that I was all the way in the back in the segregated Black section of the reporters section. And the thing is, when you're all the way at the end, celebrities come in and they get their interviews from people at the front. That's like Entertainment Tonight, Extra, you know, all these mainstream white outlets. They get primary positioning to have these interviews. And so I'd be in the back. And again, when you're a young, like, journalist, writer, reporter, going to those red carpets, like trying to get yourself dressed, preparing all of your questions, only to be sidestepped by all the people that you were going to talk to, is one of the most, like, painfully, like, wastes of time ever. And so I ended up writing a piece for HelloBeautiful.com called How Black Hollywood is Failing the Black Press. And it definitely got a lot of traction. One of my fellow journalists, her name's Lisa Lachey, she read the piece and she ended up talking to Sterling K. Brown at the SAG Awards. And she was like, yeah, as we're discussing representation in front of the camera, you know, are you paying attention to the fact that I'm the only Black journalist back here who can even ask you questions? And so it definitely erupted a firestorm of conversation around Black press mattering and how it's really important to have us represented in those stories. So it was definitely something I wasn't aware of until I got in it. But once I was there, I really started to pay attention to when we'd have, and I expect this from white people, so I'll talk to the Black people. When we'd have Black people come in and do interviews with us, you wouldn't see a tweet, a repost, I just interviewed with them, nothing, ever. And then they would literally go to another white-owned mainstream outlet the next day, share them, oh, I just did an interview with Elle, I just did an interview with this. And it's like, man, you just sat with me and you didn't even share my interview. And there was one woman who I will not name, but I did a whole interview with her. It went so well, and we ended up taking pictures of her in the office. And later we saw her use those images and Photoshop out our branding and use them for another mainstream outlet. Yes. And
yeah, I think they do that all the time.
Wow.
They actually do, but we don't always notice it. Yes, they do.
Yeah, it was really heartbreaking, especially because she's a lead in a very popular Black show. So, you know, it really.
Carry on. Okay, no.
No,
name and shame. I'm fully for it. Name and shame if you want. This is a safe space.
Yo.
I'll get y'all in the DMs afterwards or something. I don't want to air out. But it definitely just illuminated to me self-hate too, you know, and not being able to look at your fellow Black outlet, your fellow Black writer, who honestly, our early reporting is pretty much what puts them on. Not being able to acknowledge those types of outlets or those types of journalists as being just as important or just as credible. So definitely something I discovered once I was in it, and y'all know, I'm sure everybody's experiencing it, but it's
that's crazy.
That's when my eyes opened up.
Read your piece, didn't know it was you. I used to work in publicity, film, so I was privy to all the things that were going on with, you know, Black Hollywood, and I always thought it was super disappointing. And then when your friend Jaleesa mentioned it to Sterling K. Brown, he goes, wow, I didn't realize it. Sorry, I can't say that. My guy, like, we all have been fighting for Black men and women actors to get a role and to get, you know, that's why, you know, April Reign started #OscarsSoWhite. So what about us? You gonna fight for us now? Like, so I'm really happy, first of all, to know that you wrote that article and that piece really did go far. Thank you for sharing it, Kristin. That's crazy. I'm still stuck on that one. I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on that one actress. I'm going to figure it out. But, as I'm asking questions, I love that the chat is really going in. Ask your questions to our speakers so that I can get to those as well by the last 10, 15 minutes. So moving on. So we've seen the Black community We've seen Black women come out on injustices that they faced in the workplace recently, and it's been difficult to see that Black companies have been involved in these allegations. How can we do a better job at, one, protecting Black women in the workspace and making sure that we allow them to speak up on issues? Because I can imagine how difficult that is. And for those who don't know, it's obvious. I mean, there were articles about it. Essence was one, OK Africa was one, where Black women had to speak up and say, hey, we're not being treated fairly in the workspace. And it's really hard to see as a Black consumer, because I'm going to continue to support Essence in any way that I can. But also, I know as a woman, I've been treated, not the best. I've been in a situation where I found out that I was not making the same amount of pay as my white counterparts, and I did not know what to do with that information. So for you ladies in your career, have you ever had that experience? And if so, how would you, or what advice would you give to people so that they can overcome that?
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah. I've found that it's very circumstantial. And what I mean by that is that every situation that you're in, I think you have to take on a case-by-case basis, because the circumstances of the company, your manager, and what their goals are, I think are always going to affect you as the person who is on staff or a part of a team. I will say like two things. I think that whether you are a manager or you're working with a team, or you're entry level, junior level, senior, whatever it may be, I think that you have to make a decision at the very beginning of like, are you going to value the people that you work with, or are you going to value the company that you work with? And I think that like that differentiation of like, am I going to, if I'm on a team with Kristin and Keyaira, and we have a boss who maybe we all think is like cool and really great, but she's also a white woman and does not always understand the things that we specifically go through, right? And maybe something pops up where one of us gets into a situation that we are discriminated against, right? And it's like, am I going to stand up for Keyaira or for Kristin in that moment? Or am I going to kind of stay silent for the sake of like my job and my reputation? Mm-hmm. Like, to me, that is something that I think that like, that is how you figure out how you want to support other people, other Black men and women, or people within the workplace. And I also think too, is understanding that like, I hate to be like, not all Black folk is, not all skin folk is kin folk. Is that how it goes?
Not all skin folk is kin folk.
Yeah. And I think that like, they're really, just because somebody is Black just like you does actually not mean that they have the same goals as you. And I think that a lot of, and I think that that's fine. That is okay. But I think that I have to understand that, and I have to make sure that I move accordingly, right? I'm making sure that I'm really aligning myself when you can. Sometimes I think it's really hard when you need a job, when you want to go work at your favorite company that you've read since you were little, like Essence Magazine or Ebony or like wherever it may be, and you realize like, wow, this is actually really disappointing and not what I thought it would be. And also understanding, I think that like another layer is the pressure that Black media companies are put under with far less money. Mm-hmm. I don't think that excuses behavior or makes certain things okay, but I think it also affects the way that we that it can, I think that the trickle down effect of it is that it can affect the way that we treat one another within that business and within that team. And so I guess I say all that to say that I think that there are a lot of factors, and it's all case by case, but I think it's about making a personal decision within this society that we live in, specifically within the team that you work on. Are you here to like uplift this brand that like may lay you off tomorrow, or are you going to at least try to help out your coworker, even if you guys are not the best of friends, but because that's another person on the line?
I would say one thing that I've learned is beware of any type of corporate job setting that kind of touts this family environment. I've learned that that's often a manipulative tactic that they use to treat you less or to pay you less, because it's like, we're doing this for the family, Look, you show me appreciation for my work by paying me money, and that is it. Any other, oh, you're gonna get, what do they say, exposure. Or you're gonna get this and this. The only way, and I've had to fight for this because I was lured by the exposure, dangling candy early on in my career. The only way that anyone will ever show you appreciation for your work is yearly raises and promotions. And if they're not appreciating you, you have to leave, and you have to leave early. I wasted a lot of time undervaluing myself because of this belief that I was in a family-like environment, but that is manipulative. And if you're not seeing like yearly increases in your salary for the work you're giving in, you're being exploited and taken advantage of. And try to get out early. A lot of people, unfortunately, in this industry, and Darian and Kristin even tell me, a lot of people have to switch to different jobs to get the money that they deserve. And that's just real. And so don't be too loyal to any company. They're not as loyal to you as you are to them. And literally, if you are not being paid according to your contributions, you're being taken advantage of. And that's something that I would have known and wish I could have advocated for myself sooner in my career.
I have so many thoughts on this, so I feel like y'all are gonna have to bear with me for a second. The problem with our salaries is twofold. One, it's the problem with us, and two, it is a problem with companies. So Ola, I'm going to first tackle the problem that you were mentioning with companies. One, just because a business is Black owned does not mean that they are majority Black, that everyone in that boardroom is Black, does not mean that everyone on the board is Black. If they're a public company, that their shareholders, majority shareholders are Black. Most of the time, they're not. And they're gonna, and even though the CEO might be Black, the CFO might be Black, or you might walk into the newsroom and see a whole lot of Black folks, I guarantee you there's a whole lot of white folks cutting checks and pulling strings. So one, we need to set that myth to the side, that just because a business outwardly appears to be Black, that it is servicing the Black community. So that's number one. Two, I think we also have a lot of problems within the community that are a part of structural racism that we continue to perpetuate. So I'm actually going to use numbers. When I first started at Al Jazeera America, I was making $75,000. I'm actually going to say it because we do not talk a lot about what our salaries are. We don't share this information with our coworkers, with our friends, and we are essentially hindering and hampering ourselves from actually going out and advocating for ourselves when it comes to salary. And newsflash, white folks do this all the time. In fact, they get indignant, they get angry, and they get mad as hell when they find out that their fellow friend in another department is making more than them. And they share this information with each other. We do not share anything with each other, I find. We don't share advice on investments. I talk about this a lot. And we don't share a lot of information when it comes to salaries. So I was making $75,000 when I first started working at Al Jazeera America. And I found out that my coworker, well, I'm not getting the name, white guy, older than me, but very quickly was proven to not do as good a job as me. In fact, they made me work a completely new shift that they made just for me so that I could cover as many news hours as possible because every single producer wanted me on the show. And they paid him, I was getting paid, remember I said $75,000? He was getting paid $95,000, a whole $20,000 more than me. Oh, when I found this out, I tell you, I was so pissed off.
But how did you find out how much he was making?
I found out from a friend. Someone told me he had been bragging about how he was moving on to go to NBC and how he was using his current salary to get a higher salary at NBC. And he bragged to my friend, who then told it to me. So I then went to my boss and I said, yo, first I want parity of pay. I want you to pay me the same amount you pay him. And then on top of that, I want a raise because I've been working here for 2 years and I haven't gotten anything. And he said, would the $20,000 make a difference? And I said, let me take $20,000 from your pocket and see what you say. See what happens. If you like, what do you mean? So they didn't want to pay me. So I literally left. I bounced on a Friday. I told them that Monday's my last day and that I wasn't coming to the office on a Monday. So I just left and I went to a new company. So I would say,
you left without having another job.
Oh no, I had a new job. I'm the kind of person that when you tell me something, I'm like, oh, okay. I'll sit, I'll bide my time, I'll wait. I will work and like hustle hard in the background, and then I will just drop it on you and surprise the hell out of you. Like the time for you, and they were like, wait, maybe we can. No. The time for you to try to make that up to me was several months ago when I came to you and told you to pay me what I was worth. You weren't interested in doing it then, so I'm out. Like I'm gone. So I would say that the problem that we have is, one, I've started really to realize this, and I really wish that I told myself this when I was younger. And so for anyone who is younger, I'm old, I'm in my 30s now. So for any of the younger folks that are just starting out, one, if you are a minority, automatically assume that you are getting underpaid or you are being lowballed, because statistically you probably are. And if you are a woman, you absolutely are. So whatever amount that you have in your head that you think is reasonable, add on to that. Add 10,000, add 15,000, hell, even add 20,000. I guarantee you that you probably still won't be touching what some of your white male coworkers are making in the office place. So just already automatically assume you are not getting paid enough. Part of the reason is that we think that structural racism only impacts white folks to treat us badly. But we also seem to negate and ignore the fact that structural racism also makes us doubt ourselves and also makes us doubt our brothers and sisters, right? So this is also part of corporations. Just because you are Black does not mean that you trust every Black person in the room as much as you might trust a white person that walks into that same boardroom. This is how racism works. It works to oppress, as it works to help white folks oppress Black folks, but it also helps Black folks keep each other oppressed as well. And also to keep yourself oppressed in your own mind. So this is something that we also need to make sure that we are working through on a very personal level. Imposter syndrome is a very real thing. It is very hard to overcome, but you have to do it if you want to start getting paid the same amount as some of your coworkers. And then two, you need to start sharing this information with everybody else. If you're getting paid $100,000, go ask your coworkers, yo, how much are you getting paid? Oh, you're getting paid $150,000 and John's getting paid $160,000. Oh, well, I guess I'm going to have to go have a conversation with my boss then. Because the more that transparency, I believe, is power, sharing information is power. And so I fully believe that we need to make sure that we are going out there and sharing that with as many folks in our newsrooms or office spaces as we possibly can. Within reason, don't go blab your mouth to everybody, because as Darian mentioned, not all skin folk is kinfolk, and not everyone always has your back. So always be very clear of that. There are some Black folks that are content to be the only Black person on a team and take up as many opportunities as they can might come their way, again, as a part of the fact that they are the only Black person on that team. So just make sure you are very clear on who you're sharing a lot of this information with. But I think in general, we need to be doing a lot of better job of sharing with each other. And third, we don't hype each other up enough. I was doing an interview with Bozoma St. John just the other day, and she gave me some amazing advice. So she has a circle of 6, I think the number is 6, women that she constantly mentions in every meeting that she is in. She picks one of them and she makes sure to bring them up. So that means someone within her circle is constantly, like an earworm, being dropped in someone else's head. Someone of power, someone who's making decision making. So when that person is thinking, oh, we have to do a project or whatever, they automatically start thinking of those names that, like, Bozoma is literally implanted in their head in every single boardroom meeting or every single casual conversation. We need to start doing that for each other as well. Because again, white folks absolutely do that for each other. They advocate for each other, they push for each other. They definitely band together. We need to make sure that we're doing the same, that we're amplifying each other's voices, even if they don't work in your same department. I mean, we all know how, like, someone in the chat said nepotism. Yeah, we all know it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So we need to all make sure that we all know each other and that we are all, like, helping pull each other up, helping shout each other out, helping support each other. So that's my That's not 2 cents. I feel like I gave like a lot. I just talked a lot, but I just have a lot. I feel very strongly around the salary piece. And the reason I say that is this, because I have started getting really militant, and I'm sure you can kind of also tell. I've also started getting actually genuinely pissed off by how little I make compared to the men in the newsroom and the white men in the newsroom, because I'm starting to recognize that for every dollar that you don't pay me, for every week, for every year, that is money that you're not just taking away from me, but that's money you taking away from my kids, from my grandkids, from my ability to build wealth, to sustain wealth, and to pass that on to future generations. You're impacting my ability to take care of my parents when they're older. So no, I am over it. You're not going to underpay me anymore, especially when you're going to sit there and compliment me all the time in newsroom meetings or whatever. I don't need your compliments. I need you to cut a check. I don't need you to tell me I did a good job. I need you to add a couple more dollars into my bank account. It's like, I can't eat compliments. I can't feed my kids on compliments. I don't even have kids. I'm fighting for them, my unborn children. I need you to cut a check. Literally, that's all I care about at this point. As I was saying, if they value you, they will pay you. They pay everyone else. They need to pay you. We like to think sometimes that we are here out of the goodness of our hearts. No, you pay me for a skill. That skill has a value attached to it. The more valuable I become, hey, the more expensive I become. And you need to keep on paying me until either you can't afford me anymore, or the opportunity that I have here is run out, and I will move on and move elsewhere. Because trust me, when you think you might be asking too much, you might only be getting paid $100,000, and you're thinking, I don't know if I should ask for $150,000. Trust me, they're paying someone in there $150,000. Think about it. These companies are making millions and millions and millions. And I would like everyone to pay attention, especially now that we're, in this really great moment of really paying attention to what's happening. Every single company out there that says that they want to pay $10 million to a Black Lives Matter movement, be like, hey, there's a Black Lives Matter movement inside your own company. It's me. Pay me more money. If you can pay $50 million to the NAACP, you can give me $20,000. You need to really start like pushing it to these companies. I think don't ever let a crisis go to waste. And while there's collective white guilt right now, go in there and advocate for yourself. I'm serious. I'm like, go in there and make sure you like really highlight to some of your employers and to some of your managers that there's a lack of diversity in your newsroom, that there's a lack of equity in pay, and that they need to be paying you more.
And it's so funny, the counterparts that you mentioned that are getting paid more than you, mediocre. And you think you're not that good to be getting paid $150? No, your counterparts are mediocre. So like, you deserve it. Guys, we have a lot of questions. I can't even be selfish and ask my questions anymore. So I'm going to go to these ladies that are in the chat. Let's start off with Joy. She said, I was always told at my last job, you're making more than most. Translation, be grateful. It also meant I might have been making just a little more than a couple of my Black female counterparts. How did you guys deal with that?
I would say that anyone who is telling you that has some issues with whatever is happening in their lives that maybe doesn't have a lot to do with you. Like for me, someone telling me that they have an issue with how much I make, it like, I don't know, maybe I'm not saying it in the most articulate way, but I would feel, what am I supposed to do? I think with that information coming from someone who feels either vengeful or jealous about that. I think that if someone were to come and to tell me that in a way that is like, hey, you're making more than others around you who are doing similar jobs, to me that's different of like, I'm aware of the information. What can I do to solve this problem, I guess. That's my first knee-jerk reaction, I guess.
Also, like, be grateful, what?
That's weird. It's grateful for I think like the way that Kristin broke it down is like grateful for who? For whom? For what? And I think like another great point too, like about everything that Kristin said was like, when you are able to figure out and understand how to fight for your salary and fight for your work, it sets a precedent for the way that people treat you within the workplace.
There's a question for Keyaira. How do you push interviewees to promote your content? What do you ask them?
That's interesting. I can honestly say throughout my career, I haven't had interviewees who pushed my content. I push my content. So I think what became very important to me was building my own audience, because at the end of the day, you know, if it's not going out to the interviewee's audience, I want to have my own to share my work with. So I can't say that I have tips on how to get them to share, but I will say that investing in yourself is always a more sure bet than investing in someone liking you enough to share your stuff. So definitely doing the work, building audience, figuring out what your audience likes. People look at social media and they're just like, oh, I'm very strategic with everything I post. My social media is a business, and I've built a following. Oh, sorry. I've built a following.
I am so sorry. I really
Okay.
I'll put myself on mute.
It's okay. Anyway, and I've built a following approaching it strategically. So I know that's a whole other discussion, but basically, long story short, I'm more concerned about pushing my content to an audience that I've built than I am hoping that a celebrity gives me a retweet. I just can't depend on them.
Right. So you focus more on your audience. You're not really thinking about, Kerry Washington or whatever. Hopefully she does, because she has the followership.
You are stuck on Kerry Washington.
It wasn't Kerry Washington.
You want Keyaira to tell you that it was Kerry Washington that she was talking about earlier. You're not fooling us, Ola.
It was like, it's Kerry.
No, it wasn't Kerry. My interactions with Kerry have been all sweet. But yeah, definitely focus on yourself, because betting on a retweet, I just don't like making myself feel powerless in terms of like, oh, if this person helps me go viral, like,
right.
Nah, that's not the approach. How can you build your audience so that you can guarantee that your interviews are seen because of what you've done?
I love this next question, and it's to everyone. So everyone understands the importance of networking. Of course, none of us are asking for a handout. Nevertheless, not all Black women in position of power are willing to help other Black women. What are your thoughts? And I wanted to add to that, there have been times that I've gotten, every time it's hard. Like, you guys are busy, we're busy. But there have been many times and stories that I've heard from other young women who they would reach out to a woman of power and they would ignore it. They didn't say anything. Or even if you're working at, this company and it's you and another Black person, she's not taking you under her wing. She's not trying to mold and shape you. What are your thoughts on that? And have you experienced that in your careers? I love that.
I haven't with Black folks, but I definitely have with just women in general. Especially because I'm of the mindset that sometimes older women don't like to help younger women because they've had this very hard scrabble climb to the top. And so to just kind of turn around and pull someone else along with them is something that is foreign to them. So I have a couple of tips. One, everyone needs to have a mentor at every single workplace that they work at. And two, everyone should just get a mentor generally, like for their career and with life. And while I would love that, that you can actually reach out to the Black woman on your team, it doesn't actually have to be. I think a mentor is someone that is actually going to be willing to open doors for you and give you a seat at the table that you might not have been able to get otherwise because someone looked at you and said that you were too green, or that you weren't ready, or they just felt that you did not belong there. So I'm of the mindset that you need to grab a mentor wherever you can. And I've had mentors that have been Black men, white women, Black women. It does not matter. I'm an equal opportunity offender when it comes to me and my career. So I'll reach out to whomever and I'll network with whomever that I need to. But I will say that part of my ability to kind of change that society or change that structure is to make sure that I myself don't perpetuate it. So anytime someone contacts me and says, hey, can you talk to my cousin, my friend, my neighbor, whatever, she wants to be or he wants to be, but usually it's a she, wants to be a journalist, doesn't really know like anything about it, young Black girl, I will always say yes. I will always take the meeting. I'll always take them to dinner or get a drink or whatever, because at some point in time, someone helped me. I don't believe that anyone gets to where they are completely by themselves. I kind of like reject that idea, even though, yes, it requires you to work hard. Yes, it does require you to open some doors. At some point in time, it also requires someone to believe in you, to give you an opportunity. It might be surprising who does that for you. So I just make sure that I will always be willing to turn back around, put my hand out and grab and drag, if I have to, someone else along with me. And I think that if we can all make that commitment, then we're going to start to see a lot of changes.
Yeah. I wanted to add, just personally, because of course I feel the same way. Like I want to help everybody, but as someone who's actually trying to get a little more radical with my no and setting boundaries with how much space other people take up, I would suggest if there's somebody that you want to mentor or that you want to be in contact with them, offer to help them with something. Because right now, especially in a pandemic crisis time, people are like, okay, what energy preserves are for me to survive, and what energy preserves do I have for everybody else? If you want to DM someone and you're like, hey, I'm trying to learn social media strategy, can I help you with your social media? Or hey, I'm trying to learn about how to pitch, I think offering someone something that may help make their day a little bit might be a better barter deal in order to get them to give you what they want. Because I do think that if people are getting a little more tight with their time and how they offer their time, and I don't think it's always rudeness, there is such thing as like emotional capacity, emotional space for other people's problems. Some people have a wider range for that than others, and I understand that. But I think offering to help somebody with something, or hey, I had an eye for this, could this help? I think it might get you in the door, particularly in these times, a little easier.
Great advice, actually.
I think what she just said, Keyaira just said, is honestly a word, because yeah, I think that people are very quick to say yes. People really need to say no and say it often. And this is that's just life advice. I just need to say that's not even just your career. You just need to say no to whatever you don't want to say yes to. That's to your friends, that's to your man, that's to your girl, like whatever it is, create boundaries and stick with them, like honestly. But yeah, be strategic with some of your asks. Don't hit somebody up and just say, hey, can I pick your brain?
Yeah.
No, you can't just pick my brain. I get paid for this and you just want it for free for an hour. No. If I think that you need to I think that people need to be smarter about their asks that they make. I understand that some folks might not have something to offer, or they don't feel like they can offer, but even just being strategic about how you ask, do some research before you hit me up. Like, don't ask me for something where don't ask me to help you to get into beauty journalism. That's not what I do. Like, come on. Like, you didn't even look me up before you decided to waste my time with this email. So I think that like people need to just be a little bit more strategic in some of their asks. And yes, definitely saying no when you don't have the capacity is absolutely important. It's good for your mental state. It's good for your, like, it's just all around better for you if you're willing to say no to folks. But when you can, I do try to each one teach one.
Yeah. I would say that also, if you're in a space right now where you feel like you're having a hard time finding a mentor or connecting with people, if you're feeling that, I think that an approach that I took that was helpful for me is, how can I use what I have access to and what I have control over and what is within my power to become the kind of person that people want to mentor, and what does that look like, right? I think that going back to that point that Keyaira made just around a mentorship relationship is also figuring out ways that you can add to their lives and to their careers as well, and it's going to look different. And I also think that for every heart of ice or stone cold heart like executive there is out there, I think that there are executives in a test, and I think it's just a testament to my experience, who are willing to help you. You just have to figure out ways to align yourselves with them and in figuring out how to find them. And so I don't want that to discourage people in feeling like there aren't amazing Black executives out there. There aren't amazing Black women who are willing to help, because I think that there may not be as many of them, or it may not seem that there is, but I think that like figuring out how you can be the kind of person within your career that you want to be and you want to aspire to will help you to also like find those people too.
So ladies, we have so many more questions that are really good and I would love for you guys to answer, but I know that we're, you know, limited on time. So for each question, maybe one person take it on so that we can get to all of them, because I think they're all great questions. I would love to hear all of your points. Okay, so the next question is, how do you know your value to charge it? Which is a great question because I don't know.
Kristin, I think you got that one.
Your question.
Oh man, this is really something I wish I knew when I was younger. So one, I think the first step is information. If you can, like there are networking groups and resources available. Your local NABJ, and if we have any members of the Latinx community, your local NAHJ chapter is really, really a great resource. One, to meet people that are already in the field and probably already doing the work that you're doing. And don't be afraid to ask them, how much are you getting paid right now? You know, and find out what the comparable salary is. Then have a really like honest conversation with yourself, especially like in New York, where I don't know where everyone else is right now, but I'm in New York and it is so expensive to live here. So start to have honest conversations with yourself about how much money you need to live. And then I actually create 3 salary bands for myself. I create my reach salary, the salary I think I can easily get, and the bare minimum. That does not mean lowball yourself. It just means my personal red line, that I will absolutely not accept lower than this amount. And if someone gives it lower than this, I'm actually going to be offended and I'm going to walk away and also tell them I'm offended and that it's an insulting offer. So I think that I think information is absolutely key. You know, Glassdoor can be a good first step if you don't have anyone else available, and then really start to like add on money. So here's the thing, we have this like myth that we love to perpetuate, that in journalism there is no money. Sometimes, yes, that is absolutely true. If you're going to go work at Patch, you're probably not going to be making a ton of money. But newsflash, like senior producers at NBC are making like 160 grand a year. Like that's, yeah. Senior executive producers on like the Today Show, add on a couple $100,000, like add on another $100,000 to that. Like they are making a lot of money, a lot of money. Like if you can find out who the talent is on a show, for example, if you're a producer, like if Matt Lauer is making $5 million a year, do you honestly think they're only paying the producers $30,000? No, they're not. Like they're paying them a lot more than that. Like, you know, so I think that asking these questions and trying to get that transparent information is the first key. And then also too, do a gut check with yourself. Are you lowballing yourself? Are you saying to yourself, well, you know, I'm just starting out, or, well, I'm young, or, well, you know, I know I'm, no. If you're starting to have these conversations with yourself, if you're already starting to kind of talk yourself down, then you need to bump your salary up because you're already undervaluing yourself. And if you don't value yourself, then genuinely you can't expect anyone else to. That's also just life advice. I feel like I should also say that that's applicable everywhere. If you don't value yourself, no one else is going to, and no one else will. And why should they? If you think you're worth 20, why should I give you 100? So I think we need to have honest conversations with ourselves and also try to have conversations with other folks that are working in that business and in that field. And I'm going to try to find it, but there's actually a great spreadsheet that we at least were sharing around at Yahoo that actually shares media salaries for a bunch of different media companies. Producers, writers, I'm sure some of the people here have seen that. Other people are like, what, spreadsheet? Yeah. I see here like, what? Yeah, so I'm going to try to find that, and I'll definitely try to send it to you so you can either send it out to everyone that's an attendee, but it's just a piece of advice. I would encourage everyone, it's anonymous, so feel free to put your own salary on there, and you can also start to see some of the salaries coming in on what people are ranked, where they're working, and how much they're getting paid. And that kind of information is just so incredibly valuable.
That's great. Please share that. If you can find it now, share it in the chat. If not, then send it to me and I'll send it to everyone on here.
I will.
Question, I think I'm going to ask this to Darian because I think he went to school for journalism. Do you think it is necessary to have a degree to be successful in media and journalism? Oh, you're on mute.
I don't. I do think that if you decide to go the route of not having a degree in it, that you should do a lot of work to figure out what exactly you want to do within media and journalism. I think for me, having the degree and deciding to go into broadcast journalism was good because Emerson was actually, it's a very specialized, like specific kind of school. Really the only majors are within communications and the arts. And so I had a lot of room to figure out all of the different kind of jobs within journalism and where I think I wanted to focus my energy and also experiment within school. So I think that if you're not gonna go to school where you have that exploratory time, that you should really figure out how you're going to do that and how you're really going to get experience. And also I think that you should really figure out the skills that you do have, whether maybe you're coming from another career field or you're majoring in something different from school or in school, how you can apply that to what you think you want to do within journalism. I also think that and I'm not saying that like all books replace getting a degree, but I think that for me, going within beauty, I really just started writing about beauty 2.5 years ago. And something that I've really done to supplement my education of the industry is reading other academics. I wonder if I can even like pull it down right now because I'm like at my little library, but I can't find it right now, but I read books about the history of barbershops. I read books about the spaces that beauty supplies or hair salons used to be for political activism and for organizing. Like if there are things that I don't know, I reach out to academics, I read books, I really do the research. And I think that is just period across the bar, what we should be making sure that we're doing so that we're adding context to our work and to what we want to do. So yeah, YouTube too is good.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm naming all these things like, no, you don't have to get a degree, you can watch YouTube. And I'm not saying that, but I'm also saying that if you cannot afford it, if you already have a degree in something else and you can't afford to go back to school, figure out what you can do and who you can get in touch with, and go on the journey of figuring out specifically what you want to do within journalism, and just I would go that route.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, especially because everyone that we see that's an influencer today probably didn't get a journalism degree and is doing very well. So yes, learning and seeking out outlets for yourself, I think, is super important. The next question here, I'm going to have you answer it. It's from a Louisa Kruger. She said that she's just starting out in journalism, and her question is, what advice would you give your younger self if you were to start out again? And thank you. This is an amazing session.
The advice that I would give myself, I think we've touched on actually, and that's literally asking for more money. I didn't actually know the true value of my work, my words, and my writing until I left my full-time job in January. And I'm not even recommending that everyone takes leaps to work independently because it's its own hard thing. I'm still trying to find my footing with it. So I'm never someone who's like, leave your 9-to-5. Like, no, maybe find another 9-to-5. But I wish I had advocated for myself earlier. I wish I hadn't have let doubts, like Kristin was saying about, oh, I'm just starting out, or, oh, I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm just happy to have a seat at the table. Like, and again, because this is like the heart of me and this is what I am called to do for a living, I just felt grateful and privileged to even get the opportunity to do it, that I wasn't thinking about how to make myself a livelihood or to create anything that's generational wealth worthy. So that's my biggest advocacy, is I would have asked for money a lot sooner. I know we're going over that a million times, but literally Black women, we do not even get like a tenth of what we're worth. Period. The entire culture, the entire world depends on us, our ideas, our innovation, our wisdom, and they're not paying us back for it. And I found out a couple weeks ago that my great-grandmother, when she was a sharecropper in Mississippi, she used to make 10 cents for every 100 pounds of cotton she picked. And I'm just like, literally, if for nothing else, this is reparations for what my ancestors had to do. Like, you have already paid your dues just by being a Black person surviving. So never be afraid to ask immediately for what you deserve. And like Kristin said, do the research. But that's the one thing I regret. I wish I would have known that sooner.
Me too. Because I said yes to jobs that I was just happy to get the offer. I was just so happy to get the offer. Okay, this one is for Kristin. What is a best practice you apply when accepting a job offer or job hunting?
When job hunting, and this is something that I learned late, you need to make sure that you think of every job interview as not just them interviewing you, but also you interviewing them. I have definitely worked in spaces where I took the job and I hated it. I mean, I hated the people, I hated the salary, or I hated what I was actually doing. So I have worked in places where I didn't really enjoy it. And so I think that made me very militant about recognizing two things. One, every job rejection that you get should not necessarily be bad news. It actually should probably be celebrated. You probably weren't meant for that job anyway. I'm a very big believer. I don't know how many people here are faith, but I firmly believe that rejection is God's protection. And so I'm very willing to accept any type of rejection that I get. It probably wasn't going to work out anyway. Our personalities weren't going to match. You weren't going to let me do the work I wanted to do, whatever it was. So that's number one. Do not be upset when someone says no to you. Actually thank them and be grateful, honestly, because there's a whole lot of people that I wish said no to me that didn't, and then I had to deal with them afterwards. So ask questions, ask questions when you are actually in that job interview and you're job hunting. Also ask yourself, the biggest piece of advice that I think I can really give when it comes to job hunting or taking a job offer is not just asking yourself what this job is going to do for you now, but ask yourself where you want to be 3 years from now, 5 years from now. Is this job right now going to get you there? I think sometimes that a lot of folks have this climbing the ladder mentality where they think they need to do it one rung at a time. And if there's anything that we are learning from today's era, especially with tech, people skyrocket up the ladder. They just do. And I think that if Donald Trump can get his job that he has and Betsy DeVos can get her job, then damn it, I can do honestly whatever job I decide to apply for. That's just how I think of it. So I think that everyone needs to stop thinking of themselves climbing this rung climbing the ladder one rung at a time, and start thinking of how they can slingshot themselves upwards. And so you need to start asking yourself, if you see a job description and you literally fit all of the requirements, that job is probably beneath you and you should have taken it 2 years ago. You need to start looking for jobs where you're like, actually, I don't know how to do this skill. I might have to learn this on the job. You already now know you're going to be challenged. And you know that you're going to have to really work into that role and grow into that role. That should be the job that you're taking. If you're not afraid of the job that you're taking, then it's probably not the one for you. So start asking yourself, okay, how is this role going to help me slingshot upwards? And will this get me to be up here in 5 years? We're not trying to make lateral moves, guys. We're trying to move onwards and upwards. And by upwards, I mean really upwards. I need to be seeing everybody senior producer roles, senior executive producers, forget Matt Lauer. It needs to be Darian or Keyaira, behind an anchor desk. We need to start trying to make some serious moves upwards, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. I firmly believe that. So for me, Darian's win is my win, Keyaira's win is my win. We all winning together. So we need to make sure that we all start slingshotting ourselves upwards, and then making sure we look out for some of the folks that are a little bit below the waterline everywhere you look.
We have time. We have time for 3 more questions. So I'm going to try to do my best to choose the ones that we haven't already answered. Darian, this one is going to be for you. What are 3 essential social tips you can give us for our social content and posting and gaining an engaging audience? Ooh, Darian, you're on mute.
Always on mute, except when my FaceTime goes off. Okay, so I think The first one is I'll start simple. You have to be willing to experiment. You don't know and you can't learn social media until you are in the trenches of it and you're trying things. That is my number one thing. You can't be afraid to do so, and you have to really understand what you feel comfortable with in the rhythm of social and of different platforms by execution. Not only do you have to execute, but you also have to review how you felt, and also in kind of I think you have to reflect on not only just the engagement in the data around how it did, but also you have to reflect on what you can do better after that, or what you learned from putting out that piece of content or that series of content. So I think that reviewing is really important as well. I like to subscribe to a few different newsletters that have to do with internet culture, digital media, that really keep me up on just the social media landscape. I like to also really just subscribe to newsletters that have to do with the business of social media. Even though it's my career, I think that you really have to understand how these platforms are changing. How the algorithms not only change, but also how the product itself changes. So I'll drop a few of the ones that I subscribe to, but those also, you really have to keep up on those kinds of things when you can. And then third, I would say, and actually is a point that Keyaira brought up about kind of depending on other people to promote or share your work. And you have to understand that a retweet actually does not always lead to growth, right? Like there have been so many times, I wrote a profile on Tracy Ellis Ross, and she's one of the few people who has ever tagged me in a story that I have written about a celebrity. And it actually did not lead to me getting 1,000 new followers or anything like that. And so I think what you have to be committed to is figuring out your community, which I'm actually just now really starting to do and understand. And every time I implement it into not my day-to-day posts, but definitely my media headlines, or my beauty headlines that I do on IGTV, I put timestamps, so that people can, if they don't want to watch a 8-minute video, they can watch one part that they're really interested in, I think that you really have to view social media. Well, I think for me, as a journalist, I view it as a service too, how can I help people to understand what's going on and make it really easy for them to do that. And I also think that this is not social media related, but I kind of think it is. I think that look into the newsletter space. I know that everyone has a newsletter right now, but I do think that newsletters are the new blogs in a way, where for me, I have a newsletter, and it has really allowed me to not just create my own content, but hone my voice and to experiment with topics that I'm interested in. And I think that when you start to do that, and you start to understand what people want to hear about from you and what people engage with, that helps your social, because it helps you to know what to share and how to share it.
Great. Well, that's great. Okay, so 2 more questions. I think this would be a great question for you, Keyaira. How do you create your own lane if you're not given the opportunity to cover, report on certain topics in your job?
I'm of the firm belief that if someone's not giving you an opportunity to do something, you do the reporting on your own. So for example, before I landed my full-time job as a staff writer, I had my own blog at KeyairaKelly.com, and I was going out asking people if I could interview them for my blog, and I was writing reported pieces that weren't assigned and that no one gave me any money to do. It was literally just, I want to tell these types of stories, and so I'm going to use my own platform to do them. So what I would recommend is doing just that, having your own blog, your own website, and start actually creating the type of content that you want to create professionally, so that even if your portfolio is just stuff that you've created, you still have an example that you're, number one, invested in that particular field of work, and number two, that you've done it. And I think that's important. I really try to empower people to not wait for someone to give them something. I want to empower people to make different choices, and what do you have in your power to do? And I think that's one of the things that you can do. Don't feel like you have to be assigned professionally a certain lane for you to tell that story. And what I've learned is a lot of people are open to having those conversations. Like if you're willing to make phone calls, hit the ground running, be like, hey, if you're interested in beauty, you know, trying to reach out to someone to be like, hey, I love your blog. You have such a great beauty blog. Can I interview you for my blog? A lot of people are willing to do that. You just have to show proof to yourself first. I think in order to get other people to recognize that that's a lane for you. And at the end of the day, you're still doing something that makes you happy.
Okay, 2 more questions. I promised one, but I really like this other question, so we're gonna have to ask it. This is from Chassays. She wanted to know, people say that asking is not the way to build a genuine mentorship, but do you all do mentoring, and how can someone be able to be mentored by you? Shoot your shot. Do you want to take that, Kristin, and then we'll ask one more question and let everybody go?
Sure, I'll take this one. Yes, I do actually do mentoring. And there's different ways that people ask me. A lot of times it's actually happened through personal connections more often than not. I've, had a friend who has someone that wants to get in the field, and they ask me like, hey, can you mentor this person? Sometimes the mentorships are short term. They just want to like meet up with you, get some advice on their, job, career, whatever. And sometimes it's more of a longer term thing. I'm the firm believer that a mentorship should be both beneficial to the mentor and the mentee personally. Because again, networking is supremely important, and you never know who's going to put you on. You really don't. So don't ever turn your back to, or turn up your nose to someone that you think is just starting out or like beneath you in some way in terms of rank. I think that that's really important. And in terms of asking me, like, there's so many ways to reach me, literally Instagram, LinkedIn, Gmail. Like, I feel like I've got a website, like if you spend just like 3 minutes, like trying to like find me, you're going to find me. And then just reach out. I'm always willing, especially if I feel like I can actually offer something and offer advice to someone, then I always try as long as I have the time and the ability to at least do calls or something like that. I'll definitely try. But again, I think it's one, respect the fact if someone does not have the bandwidth to help you as much as you would like. Because again, you want your mentor to be invested in you. If that person does not have the space or the time right now, just kind of respect that. And but also stay in touch, because you never know when those things might change. And 2, again, do your research. Like, there's folks that are watching this right now that I probably can help, but there's also probably people on here that like Keyaira or Darian or even yourself are far better suited to chat with. Like if you're trying to get into beauty journalism, like don't hit me up, because I have no idea. I will not be able to help you. I know nothing about that. In fact, I purposely took my makeup off for this call, because I wear makeup every single day to go on air, and I was like, I need to let my skin breathe. And then I logged in and I was like, damn it, Darian and Keyaira's faces are beats the gods, and I look like trash right now. So this is my point. Don't call me if you want to do lifestyle journalism, is my point. Do some
Girl,
research.
You better let that natural glow go off.
Hit someone up. Hit someone else up. Hit someone up that you actually think is going to help you. So I think that is the key to get a good mentor for you. It's like a relationship, like anything else.
Speaking of, I want to make sure that you guys are getting supporters from this conversation. So if you can put your Instagram and Twitter handle in the chat so everybody here can follow you. And then I know that Keyaira, you have your podcast, whatever you want that, people to see and to be exposed with, and ways for them to also connect with you after this call. Please share that on the chat. And then for the last question, it's for all 3 of you ladies. Someone wanted to know, how do you find a balance between your careers and your personal/love life?
Ooh. I love life.
Okay, so I have a new boyfriend, so I can take this first. I actually got a quarantine bae that I made into a full-time boyfriend. It's possible, ladies. Like, you don't need Tinder when you have Instagram. Like, I'm just gonna say that. So I am a firm believer, and so what Keyaira was saying earlier about boundaries is also true for your job. take time off. The one thing that I absolutely learned when I was living in Europe for 4 years, they take their vacation time, all their time, and they're figuring out ways to take more. They do not feel guilty for it. Only in America do we somehow feel the need to work ourselves to death. We take some kind of point of pride in like not taking a vacation, and I don't get it, because it's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your job. It's not good for your efficiency. Think of it like this. Your coworkers are a family that you never asked for and you never chose. They are not your friends. They are not, some of them can become your friends, but they're not your friends. They're not your mama. They're not your daddy. They're not your brothers and your sisters. They're not your kids. They are not people you got to pick. So why do you want to keep spending all of your time with them when you literally get paid to take a break from them? If you need a break from your friends and family, you need a break from your coworkers as well. So I say that to say this. Feel free to say no. The workday ends at a certain time. If you want to go on a date with your man or your girl, feel free to leave at the time you need to have your personal life. Set those boundaries and keep them firm. Also recognize that sometimes you might have to work late. Yes. And if you are a hard worker, that's going to happen. But I think that when you are good at your job and you work hard for a company, you don't feel guilty at all for taking time off. If someone ever turned to me and said, "Hey, Kristin, you left early yesterday," I'd be like, "Oh, well, I see you weren't saying anything when I was giving you a lot of free time when I stayed late on Monday and Tuesday. But now I know. So I'm going to be sure to clock in at 9 and out at 5. If this is the game you want to play, you better believe we can play it all day. I'm not going to stay late. I'm not going to leave early. I'm going to come in for my 8 hours and 8 hours only." No one wants that. So usually they don't say anything. So I would say no. If there's a meeting that runs late, say, "Hey, I'm sorry, guys. I actually have to leave. I have a prior engagement." Also, do not feel the need to tell people everything. Taking a mental health day is a perfect use of a sick day, by the way, just so everyone knows. And also don't feel the need to share your business. Just saying because I'm unavailable is as good enough reason as any. You do not need to tell people. If you say, "Hey, I'm sick," you don't need to say, "I've got a migraine, I've got like gastrointestinal issue. I'm not coming in today." It's just be very firm about your boundaries. Yeah, be firm about your boundaries. And for whatever reason, it doesn't even have to be a relationship. It could just be the fact that you want to sit at home and watch 90 Day Fiance, like I do.
For myself, I would say just really quickly, I met my boyfriend at a time when I was actually intentionally prioritizing romantic relationship over everything else. And so luckily when I went back into prioritizing work, we were already vested and together and our relationship was already flowing. But I also think as women, it's okay to give yourself permission to prioritize your love life. I know that's probably like, but I just like with getting a job or with anything that you want, intention and leading with that intention of this is what I want for my life and this is what I want to build. It's okay. And some of the best advice that I ever got was you can literally have everything, but it could just be at different times. And so to be transparent, the time where I was building my relationship wasn't like the craziest career time for me, but now we're invested in each other and I can do crazy career things and I have an understanding partner. So I would just say, just don't be afraid. I know it sounds risky and it's not something that's often encouraged, but I think love is really important and helps us do our jobs even better. So it's okay to prioritize that if you want to.
I clearly need love advice from Kristin and Keyaira, because it's not that I don't want to be in a relationship, but also, I don't know.
You have so much time. Didn't you say you graduated in 2015? Like, girl, you got like all the time in the world.
Yes, very true. I think the one thing that I now tell people when it comes to like rest, self-care, taking care of yourself is that if you want to be good at your job, rest. I think that what I realized in terms of like being creative, coming up with stories, pitching, is that I actually needed time and space to breathe, figure out what I liked, what I didn't like, and come back to my work. Like there are a ton of things that I do that don't have anything to do with journalism, and they inform my journalism because I'm out and I'm meeting people who are not within this media bubble that I sometimes feel like I live in on Twitter. I DJ, I surf, I get a sense for the ways that other people live, right? So like, I don't feel like that only applies to, I think, being a reporter. I think it's necessary to what I do, but I also realize that like those kinds of things, they're fun for me. I'm learning, I'm becoming smarter in different areas of my life. And I think that they inform my journalism and they inform my stories and they help me to write great stories. It's sometimes not even like it's not like, I don't always feel like it's like media that make like the media community that makes me good at media. I think it's actually all the people outside of that who I'm supposed to be serving. So you got to go out and meet those people and have fun doing it.
I love that. You have to live to write.
Yeah. You're never going to know anyone's story if you don't know anyone.
Ooh.
So.
Great. That's a tweet. I'm going to tweet that after this. Thank you guys so much. I learned a lot. I didn't expect for me to be like, oh wait, I want to write down notes. I mean, I didn't even get to my deep dive questions, but I'm happy. I feel like our audience is happy and they learned so much. Seriously, like I'm gonna reevaluate how I'm talking to my boss about my raise just because of this conversation. And I really hope that everyone who's tuned in stays in touch with these three amazing women. They shared their Instagram and their Twitter and their podcast, and all of their links are on this chat. So before you log off, make sure that you find it so that you can connect with them. And everyone who's tuned in, please stay in touch with Sisters in Media. We're going to be having more digital, virtual events coming to you, like our Level Up series, where we are interviewing C-suite level execs to talk about their career journey. So stay in touch, and thank you guys, and have a good evening. I hope to speak to you guys soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.